Hi everybody, Captain Al speaking with your time training tips and 10 ticks targeted to teaching technical type transport travel through tailored tiny takeaways. The question for today, episode 8, part 5, what FMS-CDU exercises do airline pilots need to know? Today we take a look at FMS-CDU Pages for the Boeing 747-400 and Boeing 747-8. Let's go to the virtual simulator and take a look. Okay, we're in the virtual simulator to answer the question for today. What FMS-CDU exercises do airline pilots need to know? This is part 5, looking at FMS-CDU pages. And the pages we're going to look at will be the route page. We'll be looking at the route offset mode of operation, the fixed page, progress page, holding page, and the index pages of the initialization reference index and the departure arrival index. So we're in Seattle Tacoma. We're departing runway 34 right. We're going to be going out on the Bangor 8 departure, and the Bangor 8 departure is going to go to the ARRI transition. You notice if I bring my range up, this goes out to kind of goes here to Whirl, and then to Brem, and to Bangor, and out here to ARRI. So this is the SID and the SID transition, which ends at ARRI, and then at ARRI we pick up the main portion of the route. So what you're going to notice, what I want you to look at on takeoff, is we're going to stay on the route page. Normally pilot flying is on the takeoff reference page, like so, and the pilot monitoring would be on the legs page, like so. But in this case, we're going to stay on the route page because what I want you to look at is the R6 position, because this is usually where you find route offset. And then with a route offset, you'll have dashes, and that's where you can put in an offset left or right of course up to 99 nautical miles. You're going to see that once we depart, this takeoff prompt, which is signifying the next step in the CDU pre-flight sequence, will disappear. And you would think at that time that the route offset prompt would appear, but actually it doesn't. It just stays blank. And the reason it stays blank is because you're on a SID and or a transition to that SID, or you're on a transition to a star and or a star arrival. So anytime you're on a SID or star with appropriate transition, you will not have the route offset prompt. And that makes sense because chances are nobody's going to have you offset on a SID or a star. And if they do, you could always do it using heading select. You could go to progress page 2, and then progress page 2 would have the cross-track error right here, and then that would show you how far you are from the magenta line. And so if you wanted to offset 5 miles right of course, you could take a cut of heading select, maybe a 30-degree angle, and then look at the mileage, and once it reaches about 4.6 or 7 or so, you can start heading back to parallel the route until you get 5 miles, and then you can bracket your heading in order to keep that 5 miles. So that's how you would do it if you had an offset on a SID or a star, but chances are that's not going to happen in reality anyway. So just watch this on takeoff. I'm going to go ahead and take off now and just watch this route page and watch the R6 position as we depart. So I'll release the parking brake. We'll add 70% N1. We're in the 400, by the way, the Aerowinx PSX with a legacy FMC.
Power set.
Set takeoff thrust.
80 knots.
Check.
V1. Rotate. Positive climb. Gear up.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get on the autopilot now. We'll reach up and select left command. And notice looking at the route page now, you can see this area right here is indeed blank. And we're flying the SID departure. Now again, the SID departure is going to go all the way out to Airy. So again, you'll see if we had to offset for any reason, we could always go to heading select, like so. And we could go to progress page 2, and we could check our cross-track error. And then depending on how far you want to offset, let's say left of course, you could then go left of course by that mileage and offset the SID. But again, in reality, I've never seen a controller do that. Want you to offset on a SID or a star, unless you request it for some reason. But you can see now the cross-track error is growing. And maybe let's say we want to go a mile. So maybe when it gets to about 0.9 here, I'll start turning back to parallel the course. And again, you'd have to bracket your heading that way to stay within that mile. But we're going to go ahead and re-engage LNAV here and go back on the SID. Okay, I'll pause the simulator here until we'll go flap 5 now. We're starting to accelerate, flap 1. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording here until we get out by the RE intersection. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We're out of flight level 230, climbing to flight level 360. We're 5 miles from RE. You'll notice we're still on the, let me go back to page 1 here. You'll notice that we're still on the route page. Here's our main route. Notice this area is blank on page 2. And watch what happens as we pass RE, because remember, this is the transition to the SID, and the SID transition ends at RE. So as soon as we cross RE, you're going to see the route offset will appear. And now we can enter a route offset for our route. So we're just crossing RE now, and notice this is when it popped up. So you can enter a route offset by left or right designator, and then the mileage. The mileage has to be a whole number. It can't be a 1.5 or 3.7 or something like that. It has to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can go up to 99 nautical miles. If you try 100, it'll say invalid entry. If you put it in with the number first and then the direction, like 5 miles to the left of course, it'll say invalid entry, because that's not the proper format of entering the offset. The offset would be the direction first and then the mileage. So if we wanted 5 miles left, we could put in L5, and we could line select that to the offset line. So let's do that now. You notice when you put that in there, it takes LO5. You see a series of long dashes and short dashes, 5 miles to the left of your course. And when I execute this, the airplane, if it's in LNAV, which it is, will turn about 45 degrees to intercept that offset. Now, as a technique, sometimes this is a rather abrupt maneuver up at higher altitudes, especially if you're carrying passengers. So LNAV will tend to ignore the bank angle limit indicator, and LNAV uses its own logic in order to determine the turn. So at a high altitude, you may see that it rolls over at a 25-30 degree bank angle to intercept at a 45 degree angle to that offset. I'll go ahead and execute that now. We're going to leave it in LNAV for now and watch what it does. So we execute. The airplane will start a left turn to intercept that. And notice this changed to solid magenta now. Still this series of long dashes and short dashes. But notice the bank angle here. It's 20, coming up on 25 degrees. And if we were up at, we're at 28,000. If we were up at 36,000, we'd kind of do the same thing. So in order to make it a little smoother turn, as a technique, you could go to heading select first, start the turn using heading select, with the bank angle limit selector in auto, it's going to limit the bank angle between 15 and 25 degrees, and up at a higher speed it'll limit the bank angle to around 15 degrees. And so it's a lot smoother operation, especially when you're carrying passengers. So you notice the airplane's rolling back now on the offset route, which is 5 miles to the left of course. And we could offset because ATC wants us to. They know that these airplanes have the ability to do this, so they might say for spacing offset 10 miles right of course. We could request an offset due to weather. You know, there's weather in our 12 o'clock position, 10 miles. We'd like to offset 20 miles left of course. You know, you could request any number of things to do an offset. Now, once you're done with the offset, the way to get rid of it would be to, you can one of three ways. You can either type 0 in the scratch pad and line select that to the offset line, and then it'll go with it'll come up with 3 zeros, and you could execute that. That'd be one way. The other way you could do it is you could delete the offset. So you could push the delete key down at the bottom here, delete in the scratch pad, and delete the offset, and then it'll come up with 3 zeros again, and you could execute that. And the other way would be if you were cleared direct, like if we're cleared direct to this waypoint right here, Tango Oscar Uniform, which is, I think that's Tatoosh. You could go direct to that point, and that would remove the offset. Let's put that in just for the heck of it. TOU. And we'll go to legs page, and we'll put that in. And it's the first one here. And I'll go back to the route page, and you'll notice that that put zeros in the offset line because we're going direct to a new waypoint. So there's three ways to get rid of it. You can go delete, you can enter 0 in the scratch pad and put 0 in the offset line, or you can, if you're cleared direct to a new waypoint, that will remove the offset once you execute that. So that's in our case now, we'll go ahead and just delete it. So we'll delete the 5 miles left. And now, of course, before you execute, this is the other method we're talking about since we're at a higher altitude. We could make sure our heading bug is in front of us. And what we could do is just kind of take a little intercept heading back to the normal route, go to heading select, and then notice heading select is going to turn us, it's not going to turn us at 25 degrees, it's going to turn us around 15 degrees because the speed is high. And then we could go ahead and execute this, and that would remove the offset, and now we can rearm LNAV, and then when we get within approximately 2.5 nautical miles, then LNAV will capture and go back to our routing to, in this case, AN, which is 482 nautical miles. That's a little smoother way to do it. You see that it banked a lot smaller bank angle than it would if we left it in LNAV. So that's usually the preferred method, especially if you're carrying passengers. If you're carrying freight, probably nobody cares unless you want a smooth operation, but if you're carrying passengers, you don't want abrupt bank angle at 38,000 feet or 41,000 feet or whatever. Notice if you try to put in, let's say R100 in the offset line, it won't take that because it goes up to 99 nautical miles only. Or if you try to put in L2.5, notice it's probably not going to take that decimal point either. So it's just whole numbers, right or left, up to 99 nautical miles. Okay, let's look at the fix page next. The fix page you get to by pushing the fix function key. In the legacy, there's two fix pages. Page 1 and page 2 looks identical. In the NG FMC, there's 4 pages, so you have up to 4 fixes that you could put in the NG FMC, but in the legacy, there's just 2. And you'll notice here as we approach the airway that LNAV will capture. And if we go to our progress page 2, notice we're way inside of 2.5 nautical miles, but it bases it on the intercept angle. So we're coming at it at a very shallow intercept angle. kind of a fast speed, but shallow intercept angle. So you'll notice LNAV captured at around, I think it was around 0.5 or 0.6 where it captured. So that 2.5 nautical miles is approximate. It really does depend on intercept angle, closure rate, and speed as to where it would exactly capture that magenta line to go back to, in this case, AM. Let's go back to the fixed page. We'll bring our range up. And again, you have up to 2 fixed pages. Okay, let's take a look at what we can put in the fixed page. Why don't we pick, let's pick for the first one, Yankee Victor Romeo, which is Vancouver. And let's put that in the fixed page. So we'll put Yankee, it's not on our route, it's off our route, so we have to type it in, Yankee Victor Romeo. And we'll put that in the fixed boxes. When you do that, on the ND, it's going to denote it by a green circle around the blue nav aid. So we'll put that in. And you'll notice on the ND, we have a green circle around the blue nav aid. It gives us the bearing and distance from, in this case, Vancouver to the tip of the triangle. It's a bearing from, it's not a bearing to. So the bearing from Vancouver to the tip of the triangle is 245 at 53 nautical miles. So if you draw a line right here, it would be 246 degrees at 54 miles from here to here. That's not what's important. What's important is what we can do with this. Let's say he says report crossing the Vancouver 290 degree radial. So we could put in a bearing to get information for that. So he said report crossing the 290 Vancouver radial. So if we put that in the bearing line, it'll now draw a line on the 290 bearing from Vancouver, and you'll notice where it crosses our route is the important point here. So it gives us the ETA, the distance to go, and our predicted crossing altitude to Vancouver. Let's see, what do we have in here for the cruise altitude? 340, so we're at 340. Optimum is 370. Let's go up to 360. Yeah, we'll go up to 360. So we'll do a cruise climb here up to flight level 360. Let's go back to our fixed page. And so we could leave it like this, and then we could report crossing that radial when we get to that point. If we want to, we can also create a waypoint where this intersects our route. And the way to do that would be to take the same bearing line that you put the 290 in, and you could line select that to the scratch pad. Now you notice this distance of 130 is the distance from here, from Vancouver, to where it crosses the magenta line. That's 130 nautical miles. On the 290 bearing, it's big because that's what we put in, and that ETA is from the tip of the triangle to that crossing, and 83 miles is from the tip of the triangle to where the green dashed line crosses the magenta line. And we're predicted to cross now at 360. And so we'll go ahead and line select this a second time now in order to get the place bearing distance into the scratch pad so that we can create a waypoint on the legs page. So if you line select that down, it comes back down as a place, a bearing, and a distance in tenths of a degree and in tenths of a mile, and it exactly defines that crossing of that bearing and our route. So now we can go to the legs page and we can make it a waypoint.
Traffic.
And whoops, we've got some traffic. Let's see if we got to take action here. The dreaded Aerowinx. There it is. Okay, we'll comply with the clearance here, or the RA. So we would tell them we're complying with the RA. I disconnect the autopilot, disconnected the auto throttle, and we're following the guidance.
Increase PSX.
Okay, we're back from the dreaded RA Aerowinx random traffic that they put in. I probably should disable that while I'm doing these videos.
1,000.
And again, we're going to create that waypoint. So we want it to be the active waypoint because right now Ann is our active waypoint, and this falls before Ann. Ann is still another 413 miles. So we're going to go ahead and make this the active waypoint by bringing it to the top of page 1. And then that'll create a 5-character identifier. In this case, it's calling it the Yankee Victor Romeo 01 or the Vancouver 01. And then after that, we're going to go to direct to Ann to solve the discontinuity, and then we can execute that. If we wanted to, at this point, we could go to the fix page and we could erase the fix. And then we have the waypoint that denotes the crossing of the Vancouver 290 radial. You could leave it in as well, it doesn't matter. I'd probably leave it in just because I might forget what this is. So I'd probably leave it in just to see it. So that's the downtrack fix. And these are 3 downtrack fix lines that you get when you put in a waypoint. Like, let me put in Yankee Zulu Tango now. We'll go Yankee Zulu Tango, and we'll put that in the boxes. And again, it's going to put a green circle around here, around the blue nav aid. That's the first one. North 50 is where we are. We're not in the east longitude, so that's it. We can check it there. Green circle. And again, notice it gives us 3 downtrack waypoints. That's what these are called, downtrack waypoints. So we can put up to 3 on page 1 and up to 3 on page 2 and so forth and so on. But you also have the ability, let's say that ATC said report a beam, Yankee Zulu Tango. So if you want to report a beam, we just have a prompt here for a beam. We can line select that, and then it will draw a line 90 degrees perpendicular to our route, and it will give us a time, the estimated time of arrival, the distance to go, and the predicted crossing altitude at this point where it crosses a beam or route. So let's push that. Notice it says 038 at 34, that's from here to here. 038 at 34 nautical miles. From the airplane tip of the triangle to where it crosses is going to be, we're going to get there at 0208 Zulu, and it's 94, 93 nautical miles ahead of us. Predicted crossing altitude is 360. Same thing here. If you want to make this a waypoint, you just line select that again, bring it down to the scratch pad as a place, bearing in tenths of a degree, and miles in tenths of a mile. And then you can exactly identify where that crosses your magenta line. And then all we have to do is take it to the legs page and make it a waypoint. Again, where do we want to put it? In this case, we want to put it after this Yankee Victor Romeo 01, which is the 290 radial out of Vancouver. We're going to put it here, so we're not going to make it the active waypoint. We're going to put it after Yankee Victor Romeo 01, so we'll put it at 2 left. And it'll call this the Yankee Victor Romeo 02, or the Yankee Zulu Tango 02. So again, we're north 50, we're not east longitude, so we'll select that. And notice it calls it the Yankee Zulu Tango 02 because it's the second created waypoint in Route 1. And then we can close the discontinuity by bringing down Ann, bringing it into the boxes, and execute that. And again, you could leave it just like that as a reminder that we want to report a beam, Yankee Zulu Tango, or you could go back to the fix page and erase it if you wanted to, and you've got the waypoint there denoting that. Again, up to 2 fixed pages. Page 2 is identical. The predicted ETA altitude line is where you can see where you're going to be at a certain time or a certain altitude. In this case, if we wanted to know where we're going to be, right now the time is 0157. So let's say we want to know where we're going to be at 220 Zulu. We could put in 0220, and we could line select that to the R6. Now if you put it like this, it'll think it's an altitude and not a time. So we'd think this is 220 feet if you were to put this in. So I put that in like that, it thinks it's 220 feet. What we have to tell it is we have to tell it it's a time and it's not an altitude. So we're going to put a Z after it to denote that it's a time. Now it knows it's a time and not an altitude. And so when you put that in, it'll create a little circle. We'll bring our range up where we're going to be at 0220 Zulu. It'll create a little information circle telling you that's where it's predicted to cross at 0220 Zulu. And it's 168 nautical miles from the airplane position to that point. Now, of course, once we have an end of descent point, we could put in an altitude where it's going to cross a certain altitude and you get that same information circle. To get rid of it, you just delete it. And that will revert back to dashes when you delete it. This is useful for, probably the biggest use of this is for crew change. If you have a double crew and the other crew's resting, and the other crew is expected to be up at 0455 Zulu, let's say, then you could put that in there and it'll create that information circle to where you're going to be at 0455 Zulu. We're going to, actually that's too much because we're going to Anchorage. So let's put where are we going to be at 0, let's say they're due up at 02, let's make it 0300. Of course, going to Anchorage, you're not going to have a double crew, but. And then if you bring your range up, you'll see it's 478 nautical miles. So you could go like that, and that's way up here, right there. So this is useful if you're crossing the Pacific, or and you've got a double crew on board, and, or a 3-pilot crew even, and you want to know when the other guy's going to come up, and because he's in the bunk until this time.